You're nerds.
Improv.
Nerds.
Remember Del Close? Well, Del Close always said we were potentially torturing them. But I would flip it on the other side and say, like, they want to believe that this is possible.
You know what's interesting about your story is you never got on stage and you were still transformed by improv.
100% yes.
Which is so interesting. Because I think a lot of improvisers take for granted the piano player, and they don't even think that the piano player is improvising.
They do. We've trained them.
Oh, good.
Back in the 90s, maybe, but now they all get
Well, I think in the 90s, it was. I think the role of the musical director has changed since I started.
Mm-hmm.
It was simply you would just play underneath a herald. Now they are. What were you going to say?
Dave Adler did the first time I ever saw a piano player save a show. He saved a lot of shows over at I.O.
And how did he save that show?
Because these three guys were standing around, not really identifying who they were, where they were, what was happening. They were dropping some fun jokes and fun remarks, but nothing was happening really in the scene. And all of a sudden, David Adler was like, bump, bump, it's three dudes in a roommates, and they don't have a lot in common, bloop. And it killed. And he basically named it. He named what we all just watched. It's funny because it's fucking true, right? So it wasn't, I didn't perceive like, oh, he digged on them. It was like he caught, before they did, what was actually happening. They were trying to make a scene happen, right? That was their whole downfall. And he made a scene out of the fact that it was guys that couldn't find a thing to get connected to.
Now, as the musical director has evolved, so is improv. And so musical improv has become a huge, huge thing now.
Is it? Is it huge?
Well, it's certainly, yes. Okay. I think it's much bigger. It didn't even exist when I started in the 80s.
That's true.
Now it's like Second City has a program, the Deltones here, Improv Boston with Mike Dakota, Baby Wants Candy. But I'm going to tell you something. It is the thing that I'm still most intimidated by, and I'm just scared to do it.
All right.
See, I think there's one thing you're not thinking through with this little plan, which is that maybe if you kill yourself, they'll be mad at you. And so they get to your funeral and see your body, and they say, look what he did to us. And instead of I love you, they'll stand there and say, fuck you. Fuck you.
They'll say, fuck you.
For making life so much more difficult than it was before.
Fuck you, Carl, for taking us on this suicide tour.
Fuck you, Carl.
Fuck you and fuck you for making me see the light.
Now it's time to get out of here so we can live the life we want.
Let me show you the way it's through this door.
Fuck you, Carl.